Welcome back to Couch Casual. Today, we are going to be talking about our power rankings for Week 12 of the 2025 NFL season. And without further ado, let's get into these power rankings. So the first tier of teams we have is the Titans at 32, the Raiders at 31, the Jets at 30, and the Browns at 29. Titans, I think, are clearly the worst team in the league. I mean, they're the only team with one win, and yeah, they almost beat the Texans, but honestly, it wasn't that good of a game. They haven't been that great, especially on offense. Their defense surprised me against Houston, but again, I think it's pretty clear that at one win, they are probably the worst team. And then the Raiders at 31. I mean, it didn't look bad at the beginning there against the Cowboys, but if you hear any background noise, excuse me for that. I'll try and speak over it so you don't hear it. But again, Raiders at 31, they didn't look good at all in that game against the Cowboys after the first, 2 or 3 drives. The offense hasn't been good. The defense hasn't been good. And the run game, which could have been maybe established there against the Cowboys, a team that's been very susceptible to the run, they just couldn't get it going. Gentry was 6 carries for 7 yards. It hasn't been good in Las Vegas. And then the Browns and Jets, I swapped them two around just because the Browns actually played pretty well against the Ravens, and their defense continues to play very well, whereas the Patriots kind of just blew out the Jets. I mean, the first drive was nice. The first touchdown drive that the Jets had was pretty good, and then it kind of just went downhill after that. So that's why those teams swapped. The Browns just had a more competitive loss than the Jets did. Next tier is a much bigger tier. We have the Giants at 28. We have the Commanders at 27. The Saints at 26. The Bengals at 25. The Cardinals at 24. The Dolphins at 23. The Vikings at 22. And the Falcons at 21. I mean, the 4 teams at the bottom of that tier, the Giants, Commanders, Saints, and Bengals. Giants barely lose to the Packers. Commanders barely lose to the Dolphins. Saints didn't play, and the Bengals end up losing to the Steelers. It was a close game. The Bengals game was a lot closer for most of it, and then the Steelers kind of pulled away there with, I think they had the scoop and score fumble touchdown, which kind of helped them pull away. But overall, those 4 teams didn't really do anything, in my opinion, to really go down or really go up. So I kind of kept them all 4 at the same. Cardinals at 24. I was very impressed with the Cardinals. Despite their bad record, they were in a lot of these close games. Their defense was playing pretty solid. And I was quite impressed with the Cardinals. And even the offense looked a lot better with Jacoby Brissett. However, excuse me for a second. The offense looked a lot better with Jacoby Brissett, but over the last 2 or 3 weeks, it really hasn't. It really hasn't looked good. And they disappointed me a lot in that Niners game. And they didn't really stand a chance in that game against the Niners. So they dropped down 3 spots. And then the teams, Minnesota and Miami, I kept them at 22 and 23. I know Miami got the win and Minnesota lost, but Miami barely beat the Commanders, who without Jayden Daniels have been one of the worst teams in the league and haven't been that good with Jayden Daniels. Whereas the Vikings actually played pretty good against the Bears and almost ended up coming back in that game. It wasn't for J.J. McCarthy's early turnovers, or just turnovers in general, the Vikings probably could have won that game instead of having to make that comeback. So, again, they were close against a very good Bears team, which is why they stay above the Dolphins, but they are very close to each other. And then the Falcons at 21, very, very tough loss, not only to the Panthers, but also the loss of Michael Penix for the year. I just don't trust Kirk Cousins at this point anymore. And I only wanted to move them down 1 spot because it was a very competitive game against the Panthers. Bijan and Drake London continue to look good. But I just don't know the future, at least this season, with the Falcons and Kirk Cousins at quarterback. So they might be going down a few more spots by the end of the season. But I'll keep them at 21 for now. Next here we have the Cowboys at 20, the Texans at 19, the Panthers at 18, the Steelers at 17, the Chargers at 16, and the Jags at 15. This is probably the six most confusing teams in the league. Dallas does get a big boost after their dominant win against the Raiders on Monday night. The offense looked great. The acquisition at the trade deadline of Quinnen Williams in his first game on the Cowboys played fantastic. So if their defense can step it up with guys like Kenny Clark now playing alongside Quinnen Williams and getting healthier, and we all know how good the offense can be, the Cowboys could potentially make a push for a playoff spot. Who knows? But they definitely had a very good game against the Raiders. Texans, I know they won against the Titans, but they moved 2 spots mainly because the Jags move ahead of them with their dominant win over the Chargers. More impressive to me than the Texans win against the Titans. And also because I think the Panthers win against the Falcons was also more impressive than the Texans win over the Titans. But the Texans still have looked pretty good with Davis Mills at quarterback. So we'll see what happens when Stroud comes back. We all know how good the defense is. It's all about how consistent and how good the offense can be. Again, they're still up there. I just think the Panthers and Jags deserve to get a boost ahead of them based on last week. Pittsburgh at 17. I know they got their solid win against the Bengals, but they do move down a spot. And the only reason they moved down a spot is because of the Jags' blowout win against the Chargers. Because not only did the Jags just dominate the Chargers this most recent week, so they had to be above the Chargers, but the Chargers not too long ago pretty easily beat the Steelers. So I feel like I couldn't have the Steelers over the Chargers, which is why the Steelers went down a spot, even though they did end up getting a good win against the Bengals. They're still in that upper half of the league. In my opinion, I know they're at 17, but I still like the Steelers. At 17. And then the Chargers and the Jags at 15-16. Again, big blowout win from the Jags over the Chargers. Impressed me a lot. I really thought the Chargers were going to go in and win that game. I didn't think the Jags had no chance, but I definitely thought the Chargers were going to win. But the Jags played a really good game, both offense, both defense. So we'll see. They've been very up and down. They beat the Chiefs, and then they lose. They choke to the Texans, and then they blow out the Chargers. It's been a very weird season for the Jags. If the Jags can be a little more consistent, they definitely could keep going up these rankings. Next tier, we have the Bears at 14, the Packers at 13, the Chiefs at 12, the Niners at 11, the Ravens at 10, and the Bucks at 9. Bears at 14, big win against the Vikings. They almost blew it just like they did week 1, but they hold on to get the win this time, and they are now in the first place right now for the NFC North, so that's interesting. Packers at 13. I know they beat the Giants. Jordan Love missed some time in that game. Josh Jacobs was injured. But it wasn't the prettiest win against the Giants, and really, they haven't had a ton of pretty wins this season and some ugly losses as well. I don't really know what to make of the Packers. I don't think they deserve to go down some spots. But I do think that the 3 teams, the 2 teams that jumped ahead of them, the Niners and the Ravens, are currently playing better than the Packers are. Chiefs at 12. Tough loss to the Broncos, but when you look at the schedule of teams they've played and how close they've been in games with teams like the Chargers and the Eagles and the Broncos, they've just had such a tough schedule, and they've dealt with injuries. I'm definitely not high on the Chiefs right now, and they could still miss the playoffs, but I feel like I'm still going to take the Chiefs over teams like, I know the Jags beat them, but I'm taking the Chiefs over teams like Green Bay, Chicago, Jags, and Chargers as of now, but it's definitely close. And then the 2 teams that I mentioned going ahead of the Packers, so again, I think are currently playing better than the Packers, which is why they moved ahead of them, in the Ravens and the Niners. Niners get a big win against the Cardinals. See what happens when they're actually healthy. They blow out a very solid, okay-ish Cardinals team. That was a big win for them. On the road, I'm pretty sure. Could be mistaken there. And then the Ravens, now that they've gotten Lamar back, they have played a lot better. Defense is actually stepping up, similar to what we saw from last year when the defense improved towards the end of the season. That is happening again this year, so we'll see if they get... The offense didn't look great, but it was against Cleveland. Very good defense on the road. A typical AFC North type of game. But if the Ravens offense can play like we know they could play and the defense continues to improve, again, similar to what they did last year, the Ravens are looking like a legit team. I think they've won, 4 in a row now because they were 1-5, and that might be 5-5 now. So they're on a roll. And then the Bucs at 9, kind of the opposite of Baltimore. They're kind of sort of spiraling downward. Is that 3? I think they've lost 3 straight games, maybe 2 straight, losing to, I think, New England and Buffalo. And Baker hasn't looked great. I know the injuries have happened, but the injuries were there at the beginning of the season when Baker was looking like an MVP. The defense, I think, has taken a little bit of a step back over the last few weeks. I know they played 2 very good offenses in New England and Buffalo. But the Panthers, a team that has been a little bit on the rise recently, they're creeping up in them for that division. So we'll see if Tampa Bay can continue to. They had the Rams this week, I think. So that's another tough game for the Bucs to try and maintain that division. But they're definitely on the downtrend here. But I still trust the Bucs enough to have them as a top 10 team. Next here we have the Broncos at 8, the Lions at 7, the Bills at 6, the Patriots at 5, and the Colts at 4. Broncos, big win against the Chiefs. I know the Broncos had a good record all year, but I was always hesitant to have them high on the rankings because how inconsistent the offense had been and the teams they were playing. But big win against the Chiefs, game-winning drive by Bo Nix. It was a great throw to, I forgot who it was. It was either Pat Bryant or Troy Franklin. Great throw from Bo Nix, sets up the game-winning field goal. They get a big win against the Chiefs. They're now in prime position to win that division. And we all know how good the defense is, even without Pat Surtain. This offense can keep clicking here. The Broncos are going to be a scary team in the playoffs. Lions go down 2 spots after their horrible game offensively against the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles' defense is legit. It's not surprising that the Lions' offense struggled, but it was a great performance from Philly, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Detroit did not look great in that game on offense. Their defense continues to be pretty good. But I just think I trust teams like New England and Buffalo on a more consistent basis than the Lions, hence why they go ahead of them here at 5 and 6. Bills, big win against Tampa Bay, going up 2 spots. Josh Allen continues to play great. We all know how good the offense is going to be. It's always the defense that's the question mark with Buffalo. And then New England, it wasn't the most impressive thing what they did against the Jets, but I feel like they deserve to go up. I feel like they deserve to be ahead of the Lions, which is why they went up a spot. And then the Colts at 4 didn't play this week, had their bye week. Still one of the better teams in the league. I'll just keep them at 4 for now. Then moving on to the top 3. So number 3, we have the Seahawks. It was a very bad game against the Rams, and yet they still could have won. I mean, at least offensively with Sam Darnold's 4 interceptions. And despite Sam Darnold's 4 interceptions, not only could they still have won, the defense still looked great against a very good Rams offense. And Jackson Smith and Jigba still had 100 yards. So I think that was just one of those games for Darnold where he resorted to the Jets' Sam Darnold. But despite him resorting to the Jets' Sam Darnold, you still saw everything else from that Seahawks team that has made them so good this year. So I think if we just get Sam Darnold playing like he has the last 2 years, the Seahawks will still be fine. They'll still be one of the better teams, and that's why they're still at 3. And again, they lost to the Rams, who are one of the best teams in the league. The Rams are at 2 after beating the Seahawks, going up 1 spot, switching places with them and Seattle. Again, same thing with the Seahawks. Defense continued to play great, but the offense definitely struggled again against another very good defense. I'm not going to take too much into it. I feel like that game was either going to be super high scoring or super low scoring, or like what happened to this team's offense or what happened to this team's defense. I feel completely fine about both Seattle's and Rams' offense. But again, you got to give the Rams the bump after beating Seattle. And that leaves our number 1 team still being the Philadelphia Eagles. I know it hasn't been pretty, but that defense has been exceptional the last few weeks, mainly against Green Bay and Detroit. I mean, the Jalen Phillips acquisition has been perfect for this Eagles team. The D-line of Carter, Jordan Davis, Ajomo, Jalen Phillips, Hunt. They even brought Brandon Graham out of retirement. The D-line's been great. And the offense, yes, it's been inconsistent. It struggled, but they made plays when they needed to. So I still think the Eagles are one of the better teams. And again, when you beat the Lions and hold the Lions to 9 points, and you already were number one before the week, it feels bad putting them down a spot. So I keep the Eagles at 1, even though yes, the Rams did beat the Seahawks. I'm gonna keep the Eagles at 1 for now, with the Rams at 2, just because of how dominant that defense was against a very good Lions offense, which is why, again, I have the Eagles still at number 1. But you can honestly argue it's 1A, 1B with the Eagles and the Rams, at least in my opinion. But since the Eagles were 1, I kept them at the 1 spot. And that will conclude our power rankings for Week 12 of the 2025 season. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you are new. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.